Welcome to the Strategy Mob Podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me in another episode of Strategy Mob. Today, I have two very special guests. I have Miss Bri Newman, all the way from Toronto, which is like a stone throw away from me. I don't know why I said all the way. It sounded cool. And Brandon Smith. Brandon, I forget, where are you at again? I forgot where you're located.
Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
That's right. I knew it was way up there. I was going to mess it up, so I didn't even say it. So I thought I'd ask. All right. Hey, guys, for everyone out there that's listening and watching right now and kind of don't know how you two started in the industry or kind of even what you're doing right now, let's start off with a couple origin stories because I bet you they're super good origin stories. So, you know what, Bri, I'm going to start off with you. How did you get started in the automotive industry?
Well, typically my go-to line is I was tricked into it. I started as a consultant for a brand company, and we were doing a project for a dealership helping set up their HR department. So, graduated from business school, went right into consulting, the path of that. And here I am many, many years later and loving it. It's been a really fun journey to get to this point, worked across North America with lots of different dealership sizes, OEMs, working on brand strategy, employee experience, all of those talent related items. And now am running HR4, which is an HR platform really focused on helping dealers manage their talent.
And I think dealerships need some serious help managing their talent. Let's use the word talent. I think that is the word that needs to be used in our industry right now. If I could, I would literally just kill the word warm body. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how often you guys, like, it blows my mind. Like, I know I'm digressing, but it's my podcast. I can do whatever I want, I guess. But it's like, let's actually bring talent back into the dealership. So we're going to talk more about that. Before we get into that, Brandon, for yourself, how did you get started in the land of misfit toys that we call the automotive industry?
So mine was probably more typical than Bri's. I had just gotten married, and I had moved back I was living in Ontario, moved back to Nova Scotia, and my mom had been in the car industry for about 10 years. At this time, and I was kind of saying that, it's time for me to get in the car industry. She'd been an F&I manager for a long time, and that was something that I really wanted to do. And so I started actually in Halifax, Nova Scotia at a Kia dealership, near and dear to your heart, I'm sure, Jason. And,
Absolutely.
And then from there, I actually became a finance manager for a Honda dealership. Then I went to a Mitsubishi dealership, and I had this terrible idea going along that I should be a GM someday. So I then became the sales manager, and now I'm the new car sales manager here at Steel Chevrolet in Dartmouth.
That's awesome. And you know what? To kind of start off our conversation, what let's identify kind of what your guys' current norm is, because I love asking the question because it's so different for everybody. So Bri, for yourself, what is the current norm for you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a whole lot of people, which is very different from the regular pre-pandemic norm. But honestly, it's answering a lot of, helping our clients with a lot of HR related stuff. I'm thankful we are now in the, things are reopening. How does that look from a strategy standpoint? Who are we bringing back? And what are going to be the new norms in terms of responsibilities when someone does come back? So definitely thankful for those conversations versus the world is ending, what do we do? Type of conversations we had for the first few weeks. So that's kind of the new normal. But yeah, trying to stay in a routine, I think has been the biggest thing, still like working out and by working out, meaning like all you can really do is run or, do some sit-ups in your apartment. But otherwise, not a whole lot. I do look forward to cooking though now, because I feel like it's the only thing you can like truly plan is cooking a good meal. So I try to do that a few times a week, but otherwise lots of working.
Actually, it's the same for me. I actually do a lot of cooking. I actually thoroughly enjoy cooking. It's actually kind of one of my places for me to kind of zone out, and I am a master barbecuer. Like I don't time anything. I just literally think I got a sixth sense. I just know when things are done. And it's just like, I'll just be sitting there going, yeah, that brisket's done. I need to go flip it. And it's just like, I don't know, I think I got it from my grandfather, but I've had the opportunity to do a lot of that as well. I mean, this weekend I actually camped in the backyard.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, every single bone in my body and muscle in my body aches right now. I mean, the fact I slept on the ground in the backyard. My kids, like, I got 3 under the age of 9, and, they all weigh less than 50 pounds. So it's like, there isn't nothing there. They're just laying on the ground like, this is great. I had so much fun. And then I'm like I couldn't sleep at all. And the wind was howling, and it was just, but you know what? You do it for your kids. That's what you do, right? You go with no sleep with it. Hey, Brandon, for yourself, what does the current norm look like for you?
For us, we're actually in the process of kind of, before the pandemic started, we had our sales department employed about 40 different people, including the managers and the GM and different support staff and salespeople. And when the pandemic started, we ended up temporarily laying off a big portion of that. We actually went down to about 8 people. So we had 4 managers, the GM, 1 finance manager, and 2 salespeople was what we had gone down to. And that basically carried us through the last 2 weeks of March and then the first 2 weeks of April or so. And we started to bring people back on as our leads are starting to climb and whatnot. And we're back up to now we have 6 salespeople, 2 prime managers, 1 non-prime manager, and then all the managers are here. So for a while there, a lot of the managers were wearing multiple hats and kind of doing everything we could to be flexible and versatile during the pandemic there to try and keep things moving along without reduced staff. But now we're getting to the point now where we're kind of getting closer to being almost back to full strength, and look forward to when we can really get back to full strength. So
that's cool. And I'm glad to hear that we are kind of heading back. I mean, the announcement that we received, that we can start doing, sales by appointment, which still, like, a lot of people seem to think like the dealerships are open. Like, they're not open. Like, there's a lot of stipulations that are going into us being able to actually handle business by appointment only, but let's talk a little bit more about how we see the new norm is going to progress, because here's the one thing I don't think anybody has argued with me so far is that we're not going back to the way it was, and it's not because we're choosing to, it's because the customer is choosing to. I mean, I'll give you an example, grocery stores. I will never walk into a grocery store again in my life. For the first off, I don't know why the hell I was walking to a grocery store in the first place. I had 3 kids under the age of 9. You want to know what it's like walking into a grocery store with them? It's like, how dumb was I? It's like, but now since, like, we've ordered our food, I make purchases from Canadian Tire. I just pull in and I give them my number and they bring it out. Like, that is kind of my new norm. And now what it is, I think for a lot of customers, is going to be kind of the new expectation, is that the way that we engage with retail, and I don't think regardless what kind of retail, is fundamentally changed. Now, I still believe there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to want to go back into a dealership and shake hands and hug it out when they make a deal. I don't know about the hugging part, but and that's fine. But I think even those people that will want to go back into the dealership will still want to do a larger percentage of the transaction online, which changes everything. It changes the way we staff our dealerships. I mean, Brandon, I'm glad to hear that people are coming back. But, I was talking to a dealer principal earlier where, for the last month and a half, they've been having to do a lot with a little. And he's sitting there asking himself the question, do I really need, this big of a team? I'm thinking about, to sell a car, a person has to deal with a BDC rep, a sales manager, a salesperson, and an F&I manager. I need 4 people to actually handle a transaction. So, I mean, I know that sounds bad, but I mean, it's just the truth of the matter, right? So I think there's, the way we staff our dealerships are going to change. The way the customer requires us to engage with them is going to change. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on this. Bri, I'm going to start with you, and more, I think, from the HR perspective. Of like, how do you see staffing kind of changing, getting into the new norm?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's been a recurring theme from a lot of our clients is, hold up, like, we've been doing a lot with a lot less. And, this begs to say, do we need all of those positions? They were kind of a luxury in a sense prior to, and, maybe didn't make for a completely seamless customer experience because you were getting handed off through the process. I think, the running joke we heard at the beginning of the pandemic was customers have been asking for social distancing for many years. and now we kind of were accelerated as an industry into that. And I think that's, a neat part in a sense. I mean, obviously, dealers being very large employers, especially in Canada, I think I heard a stat the other day, they employ 1 in 7 or 1 in 9 people in Canada. Like, that's a lot. But I think what it's doing is it's forcing us to understand the importance of where our roles and responsibilities fall within the customer experience. So before, we had a box of sales consultant. This is what you're supposed to do A through Z. Well, that role is really different. So it means we can recruit for a different type of person, which I think is super exciting. Now you think of the digital component of it. How comfortable is your current team or someone you're hiring with the digital side of things, right? Because ultimately, if they're not able to walk through that process or facilitate an online process or aren't comfortable on camera, then they're not going to be as impactful in this new age as the before of the shaking hands and the hugs and that different side. So I think it's accelerated our need to look at what our job descriptions and our job accountabilities look for and the type of personality we're recruiting for.
And I love the fact that you use the word accelerated, because that's maybe actually what it is. I mean, I know I'm using the word the new norm, and I know a lot of people are, and I think it's just kind of a general term for what we're talking about. But really what we're doing is we're talking about the way customers have always wanted to do business with us. Yeah. This isn't totally new. This is more, to your point, Bri, is that this is just accelerated. All right. Yeah. Our requirement now to meet that customer's expectations. It's like they're putting their foot on the ground and saying, no, like, this is my expectation. Why do I buy a car and walk out with a folder of paper that's this bloody thick? But I go to Home Depot and I buy, a 15-cent bolt and they email me the receipt. It's just a lot of customer expectations are changing. Brandon, for you, at that dealership level, how do you see this kind of playing out going into this accelerated expectation of the customer that they're going to have of us?
For sure. So one of the things is, I don't think a lot of people have kind of thought there's this huge paradigm shift coming and that, we're going to go fully online and that dealerships might go to the wayside. But my experience here firsthand, like we never closed down. Like, we weren't like Ontario where dealerships were shuttered. We were declared an essential service, both sales and service, by the Nova Scotia government from the beginning. So we've been open nonstop. And we still have a lot of people who are coming in. We still have people who, despite us trying we, as a rule for the store, we've set up things to be by appointment only, mostly to make sure that we're enforcing social distancing and we're keeping 6 feet away and we're doing a lot of safety stuff. There's a lot of people who are still expecting things to be the old way. And one of the things that was really good about our dealership is that we were always pretty forward thinking to begin with. So a lot of the shift to trying to do as much of the process online as possible has allowed us to we already kind of were ready for this. So all the stuff that's accelerating it, we were already kind of there. We had an in-house video platform that we've been using extensively, and a lot of our processes that we already had in place were dealing with people remotely, dealing with customers over the phone and internet. A lot of times we can do a deal before the customer ever got to the dealership. And so for us, we were really, really ready for this. And I think that's part of the reason why we've been so successful. Even in April alone, we delivered over 100 cars at our store here. And
well, let's take a moment to say congratulations on that. Like, how far off, by the way, from your target was that?
So we ideally, in a perfect world, we would have been, we were pushing for a lot of growth this month. So I think our budget was set up for 180, and ideally we would have been around 200 cars. But we, I think, with all we started the month, the first 2 weeks of the month with 2 sales guys, and to finish the month with over 100 cars delivered. We were all pretty proud of what we accomplished, and a big part of that was being already forward thinking and established. And I think for the dealerships that were clinging to the old way of life, they're faced with the reality of having to catch up now. And for people who are forward thinking now, they're ready for this new wave.
I love the fact that, forward thinking is what's really kind of required here. And, to your point, Brandon, you guys were kind of already preparing for this. For everyone out there that's watching and listening, I know there's been a lot that you guys have done, to kind of get prepared for this. And this wasn't an overnight thing. I think that's what a lot of dealerships need to understand too. There's no light switch. There's no magic diet pill. There's no 12-minute abs, program for us to get to the point where we're able to provide this type of experience, for our customers. So, for what would you say operationally, the three biggest things that you've changed, to kind of meet the customer's new expectations?
So for us, a lot of stuff has to do with safety-oriented changes that we had to make. That was really the biggest changes. So one of the things is before we used to have a customer, like a salesperson's cubicle, and the customers would sit in the cubicle. They're actually sitting outside the cubicle now, and there's a pane of glass between the salesperson and the customers now. We've also had to stagger our, the way we have a showroom set up with customers, so that customers and salespeople are always at least 6 feet away. Again, we're really fortunate. We have a gigantic dealership. We actually have a second building, which is running right now. Besides, we have 2 buildings that our sales department's operating out of right now, just to help us with social distancing. But then again, we have tape on the floors showing how far 6 feet is. We have hand sanitizer everywhere. And then the other thing too is we've really made a deliberate effort to show people how we're disinfecting cars. So when someone wants to take a car for a test drive, for example, we have a drive-through service bay. So we have them walk into the drive-through service bay. Salesperson pulls the car in, disinfects the whole car. Customer gets in and drives it on their test drive solo now. Our salespeople are no longer going on test drives, which is a new change. And then when they're done, they come back in. We disinfect the car again, and the salesperson goes and parks it. Same thing for trades. We get the customer to drive the trade into the service bay. We disinfect the car. The used car manager or myself will go and appraise the vehicle and take it for a quick drive. We bring it back in, disinfect it again, and then give it back to the customer. So these extra steps that are oriented around safety have been the biggest changes for us in our day-to-day. Dealing with customers online or at a distance is nothing new for us. So the real big changes had to do with changing how we operate from a safety standpoint, making sure that both customers and our staff are safe and that they feel that we're, taking the necessary steps to ensure everyone's safety.
Mm-hmm. The necessary steps, require a lot of communication. And this is where I find that kind of separates out kind of the good dealerships to the great dealerships are the ones that are really, really doing a phenomenal job of over communicating to their customers as far as what the process is. So if someone, needs to service their car, what are the 1 through 12 steps that I have to take? I bought something from Canadian Tire the other day, and in my email confirmation of my order was like 9 steps that I had to take to pick this thing up. It was like I had to drive through this line, I had to wait for this person, I had to show them this confirmation number, then they assigned me a parking spot to go park, and it's like, but you know what though, I went into that experience very, very confident because as a consumer, it was so clear to what I had to do, where I had to be, right? So there's one line of communication that I want to talk about. And Brandon, we're going to get into a little bit of that with you. The communication I want to talk about with you, Bri, and I've seen it was probably the biggest lack of communication is the communication to our staff.
Yeah.
And I think there's a bunch of communication as far as what you should and shouldn't say. I mean, I talked to a dealer the other day where they told their HR person, I'm not going to say names, I won't throw them under the bus, but the HR person literally said you should not talk to anybody laid off or furloughed. I was like, what? So you're going to lay off 62 people and then have no conversation with them at all during that time frame? Like, it just sounded like such a horrible idea to me. But Bri, I'll start with you, and then Brandon, I want to come to you. Communicating to your staff during, the times of layoffs or, furlough, what are some of the best practices?
Yeah, frequency for sure would be number one. And it doesn't have to be like, here we are again in the pandemic. Some of the best of our groups, we've been seeing them communicate about, here's what our leadership team is doing to reopen. Here's this extra safety precautions, not just for our customers, but for you as our staff, because we want you to feel comfortable in the workplace, because that's a whole other issue that we're dealing with, right? And then just like, here's some tips to do at home while you're bored. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you keep your mental health, or communicating about your benefits programs and what EAP programs are available. I think oftentimes, we assume that there's that severance of a relationship through a layoff or a furlough, that all of a sudden they're not our responsibility. But really what we saw at the beginning of the pandemic was whether you were still employed or you were on layoff, those employees were looking to their employer to say, what the heck is going on? And just that sense of security. And I think what we've seen is the companies who are doing that really, really well, whether it be in auto or outside, are gaining that engagement and loyalty from an employee perspective very differently than all of the other things we say are important to employees, like good pay and culture and all of those other things. We're seeing just simply communicating with your staff to say, hey, I'm checking in, is a really, really easy way to make sure that you keep your staff engaged, whether they're working or not. And that's, I certainly would say as much communication as possible and just being transparent and open. Nobody knew when we first started this how long this was going to play out. Even now that we're starting to roll people back in, having that communication with the staff to say, this is a phased approach. It could change, right? Because we know in Ontario right now, they're kind of monitoring for the next 2 to 4 weeks, whether or not we go to the next phase, right? And we could stay in lockdown longer or we could come back. And, as leaders, we have to make sure that we're one step ahead and providing as many resources as possible, communicating how to access CRB, what we're doing around the wage subsidy, why we might not choose to bring back people on a paid leave. So all of those other things that you're doing in the back end, you have to find a way to message that to your employees, especially to your managers, so they can then communicate with their employees. Because you don't want that, this is what we're doing here, to then be translated to managers in a different way, who then are the direct contact with the employee, and then that's misconstrued or something is misunderstood. So communicate as often as possible is what my recommendation would be, for sure.
I think that's a great idea. I saw a dealership that was holding a weekly State of the Union.
Yes.
For their staff, and I thought it was actually an amazing thing. In fact, they invited me to come on this Friday to kind of hang out with them and just if I can provide any tips and tricks and just ideas and stuff like that. But they've been holding this weekly State of the Union where the dealer principal is coming on, and it's not mandatory, but it's there, right?
Yeah.
And he has about 4 or 5 points that he's always kind of consistently updating. Mm-hmm. So it's like to your point, Bri, a lot of people heard dealerships opening, like a lot of salespeople heard that. That's not really what happened. It's for us, it's like by appointment. Well, that doesn't mean that, so there are a lot of salespeople that were making phone calls on Monday going, okay, boss, when am I coming back? When am I coming back? I mean, I'm reading all over the internet right now that, dealerships are open. Well, that's not really the case. So it's like that consistency and frequency. I'm with you on that, like of what we communicate. Now, I had a question for you. You may or may not be able to answer, and that's fine. But I did have a salesperson that actually refused to come back to work because it was not clearly explained to them at all what the dealership was doing, all right, to ensure, this person's safety. And, I didn't know from an HR perspective, what is the requirements for us to communicate, to our staff about our precautionary efforts.
Yeah, I mean, you want to put in, there's a few different policies you're going to want to put in play. And then obviously all the safety precautions like the plexiglass, the PPE when and where necessary, the disinfecting. I think the procedures that we're seeing come in play, like do you have a person designated to disinfecting the key to the test drive car, and that it's just like, it's almost like handed off into like a box, and like that's the box of dirty keys or whatever that looks like. So I think that's a big piece. The refusal to work thing is tough, and it's definitely tricky because one, each province is slightly different, and two, it really depends on the employee and the employer relationship and how candid of a conversation you can have with your employee. Ultimately, that serious refusal of work requires someone in from the government to come and inspect, to make sure that whether or not it's warranted. But then there's also implications with CERB and whether or not an employee will still qualify for CERB. Like that whole point of that subsidy was for employees was because you are not able to work. Now the employer is saying, hey, your job's here. We're ready for you. Here's the 15 things we're doing to make sure we keep you and our customers safe. And then them still refusing to come back. So there's a few implications from a legality standpoint that you always want to check with an employment lawyer. But best practice, again, that communication, weekly huddles or daily huddles and check-ins, not in person, whether remotely or distanced, to say like, here's a reminder about our protocols, and then tracking those protocols. We know that the governments are going to be extremely stringent from a health and safety inspection standpoint. And so tracking and logging your steps and when things were cleaned and disinfected is super, super important in case you were to ever be inspected. So I think that's another component from a communication standpoint and a tracking perspective that we have to be mindful of.
That's actually a really good point, Bri. And Brandon, this kind of leads into my question for you. We're communicating to our customers, we should be communicating to our customers what our processes are. But I'm a little concerned about one thing in particular, what we're communicating to our customers right now, is we're communicating to them that we're sanitizing their vehicle. And I just don't think dealerships realize what that means when you say something like that. My family, we come from the restaurant and hospitality industry, and I'm pretty aware of how stringent it means to say that. I mean, there are many, many standard operating processes and sanitization processes that have to be followed, but we've never as an industry had to sanitize a car. I mean, I saw a dealership the other day post a video where they just sprayed something into a rag and wiped down the handle and the steering wheel, and they were calling that sanitized. And I'm like, that is so far from sanitizing something, So I'm a little concerned, but I'm finding the dealerships that are really winning at this are the ones that are over communicating exactly what the process is. Brandon, for yourself, how are you finding, communicating to customers, and what are some ideas that dealerships can use or execute to better their communication efforts?
Sure. So, I mean, video has for a long time been the tool of the future, right? So, we created a video explaining for our service one, a real detailed video explaining the process of how to get your car into service, what happens after you book your appointment, and when you arrive for your appointment, and we're in the process of doing something similar for sales currently. I mean, the few of the things we've done that are obvious for people is just the amount of there's hand sanitizers everywhere, there's stickers everywhere advising people to stay 6 feet apart. When you sit down at actually even F&I offices right now, when you do have to sign a contract in person, because all the banks have enabled us to do digital signing for the first time in a long time, the first time in ever really. But one of the things we've done is we've actually put 2 desks back to back so that there really is 6 feet of desk between you and the person that you're sitting in front of.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Which before was something that well, even now it still looks ridiculous, but it's this things that we have to do when you're thinking about people's safety. And then even again, when we go and we sanitize the cars, we went and invested a lot of money in a number of machines that are like they hook up to an air compressor and you spray down the whole thing, and it is like real hardcore sanitization of a vehicle.
You're using a wet fogger then. Yeah, no, that's a great way to do it. I mean, people have to understand that just taking a bottle of Lysol and spraying it onto a surface, that's not sanitizing. Anyways, I apologize.
No,
keep going.
And no problem. And like I say, when people see the lengths that we've gone, just even for just a test drive, they know that kind of goes further on behind things that they can't see. And then I think those things are what's really important right now.
What are you communicating to customers as far as like the sales process? Like, if it's like, if I need to buy a car or my lease is coming due, how descriptive have you guys gotten about, here are the 17 steps. I don't know if there's 17 steps. I'm making that up, but like how many steps are there, and what and how are you communicating? Is it on the website? Are you emailing them in advance? Are you just kind of curiosity, like what's that process and how you're communicating the process?
So in the early part of the pandemic, we really cut back on any sort of sales messaging. Everything was more about that we're here if you need us. We've only very recently shifted to taking a more sales-centric approach to what we're advertising, what we're marketing. But it's nowhere near what it used to be still. A lot of what we're saying now is that, we're here to support you. If you're in the need of a new car, we're here to help you out, and this is what we can do for you. And then here's basically what we can do is, let's set up an appointment. We have all these kinds of things about, setting up an appointment now. Real focusing on setting appointments is the main thing. And then the other thing too is it's a lot of explaining what we're doing as we do it. We wouldn't necessarily lay out the whole, say, 10 steps ahead of time, but we're laying out maybe 1 or 2 steps at a time as we go through. So listen, you've set your appointment. This is what you can expect when you first arrive, walk in, go to reception, and then we'll sit at our desk. And then when they're at the desk, this is what we're going to do. Here's how we're sanitizing your vehicle to be safe. Once you do your purchase, you're going to go in and speak with these people, and then we can deliver the vehicle to you. You don't need to come back into the store if you don't want to. But what we're finding too is that a lot of the customers that are currently going out and shopping for a vehicle, they're the ones who aren't taking Corona very seriously, and they're not necessarily the ones who are home, isolated, and afraid. A lot of these people are the ones who are probably the same people who might go out and protest it for whatever reason. But a lot of these people, but then we do see some people. Like we had someone who came in a hazmat suit to sign a contract. Like they were that terrified of what would happen. And so there's a wide range of things that you're seeing, and there's a wide range of messages that we're communicating to people as well. A lot of it is playing off of the person when they tell you something. If they're expressing a lot of concern over the safety features, then we amp up what we're explaining that much more and really go into detail, not just on the service side, but then we also explain all the things we're doing. Not just on the sales side, but then we also explain the things we're doing on the service side just to put them at ease. Because it's not just us, it's not just for you. This is what we're doing for everyone who comes into the dealership.
So that's really cool. I mean, I think, we've never had to over communicate this much ever, right? I mean, you got to understand, as an industry, all of our communication efforts have been for one goal: to get you into the dealership. It's everything we've said, everything we've trained on, everything we've coached on, everything we've developed on was this is why you got to come in and service your car. This is why you got to come in and buy a car from us. This is why you got to come in and buy parts from us. And, I think as an industry, we're having to kind of retrain where, the customer is the one that's going to have to really kind of drive the direction of the process. Where in the past, it's like, you want to buy a car? Okay, cool. Here's our process. Come on in. We'll take you through it. And now or service, same thing. It's like, here's our service process. Come on in. Now we're having to literally come up with maybe 4 or 5 different variations of that process, because that's how consumers are going to want to actually engage with us. There's no one way anymore. I think there's so many ways to do that. And, brief from on the HR side, you kind of mentioned this earlier, we need talent. Yeah. It is going to require talented people, that to handle the new customer's expectations, right? It's not enough now that we have warm bodies. I'm still amazed. I've been in the business for this long, and I still hear that term used at least every couple of weeks. Have a pulse. You got a pulse. Come on in. You want to, but no, seriously, we're gonna have to change a lot of that. So, how do we attract? How do we kind of train that new talent? I'm curious, Bri. I want to get your kind of thoughts and opinions on what you see the new talent's going to be for our industry, and then Brandon, I'll get your thoughts and opinions as well. Bri.
Yeah. So I think, again, it's all in it's the same thing we've been talking about from a communication standpoint. It's all in the messaging. What are you expecting this person to do from a skill set, and what prior experience would help benefit that skill set? So selling might not be that skill set we're looking for anymore, right? It's more about that relationship build, because you have to do it remotely. So you have to have someone who's skilled in that. Like I said, digitally inept, someone who's able or digitally skilled per se, is super important. Someone who's comfortable on video or on camera or on FaceTime, whatever method that the dealer is going to use. I think, again, as we transition, I think what will be interesting is how we switch auto to more of that. And not to say that auto was never having professionals in it, because obviously it has, but it's never had that demeanor as an industry. Where you look at real estate, for example, right? One of the big conversations a few years ago with
dealers. It's okay, Bri, you can say it. We're just a bunch of degenerates.
Well, that's what people perceive it as, but that's not the case.
Well, I'll tell you, the first dealership I worked for was a bunch of degenerates.
Right.
I mean, you pretty much got your bonus check, and it was like, let's go to the bar. How much alcohol can we possibly consume until Saturday morning meeting? Show up to a Saturday morning meeting still pissed drunk from the night before, you know?
No, for sure.
But no, I sorry, I digress. But yes, you can use the word degenerates because there's still a lot of us out there.
there's some in every industry. But I think the biggest thing is, you know, you look at the real estate model. A few years ago, we were having conversations with dealers who were like so anti-social media. And we were like, this is free promotion for your dealership if Joe takes it upon himself to promote you through social media because he wants to sell or she wants to sell more cars. And, you know, there was always this hard, like, fear of what would happen or the liability. But, you know, you look at Royal LePage or you look at, you know, Sutton Group, you follow any of their real estate agents on social media, and those people are 100% focused on their personal brand. So as an industry, how do we enable our people to have that entrepreneurial spirit and recruit for that they're really kind of, you know, selling you as a dealership? You're kind of there facilitating, supplying the product and supplying the space. And they're the ones kind of, you know, going out there and promoting it very organically. And again, as we see this personalization in the customer experience and the contact list, you're going to need those people who have that organic pull. So I think it's just switching our methodology of and again, this pandemic again has accelerated that, of this is how it's always been done, and looking at other industries around us to say, you know what, they have independent you know, salespeople who are responsible for high worth transactions, and how do we replicate a very similar model in dealerships? And that means a different pay plan, right? That means different roles and responsibilities. That means not necessarily requiring someone, and Brandon, you might disagree with this one, not requiring someone to be there from 9 till 5. Right? Maybe it's a different position you have that's there from 9 to 5 to help handle that walk-in traffic once we're allowed to do that. But then you have those professionals who are there to take you through the rest of the process, similar to how a real estate agent would do. So I think looking at the sales and then also looking at the service side is, how does that contactless delivery and what are the different positions on the service side that enable clients to feel empowered around that side of the business too. So I think as every time you're reshifting an organization and you have a different customer experience, you have to kind of have your swim lane running beside it, saying, okay, how does this affect my people and my roles and responsibilities, and kind of who is the type of person that can fit that role? Because I think we always, you know, just go with the status quo of this is what a sales consultant or a service advisor is supposed to do, without actually saying, what is the purpose of this role within my organization and within the customer experience? So stopping and asking yourself that question right now is really, really important too.
No, I think that's a great point, Bri. I mean, and we could definitely take a look at the real estate industry and how they've done it. I've consulted and done seminars for many different brokerages. And I'll tell you what I find consistently with all of them. It's a mandate. It's not an option. If you work for this brokerage, all right, and they literally have it written into the employment agreement, all right, that you will do this. You will stay on top of your social media efforts. All right. You will be willing to communicate, you know, via text message or a social messenger or whatever the customer feels comfortable. And like they've written it down to the point where it's not an option. It's no longer a good idea. It is a mandate. And I feel like that's how they're able to quickly get the entire body of agents up to a par where I feel like, I can engage with a real estate agent right now and never have to call them.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, almost every agent I know, like I can literally I can pick this thing up and say, hey, I saw this property on ABC Street and it's, 675 ABC Street. I'm interested. And then they wouldn't call me and say, that's great. When can you come by?
Yeah.
Like they would continue to have the conversation with me over the device that I have engaged with them in the first place. But now it's Sock Automotive. Now we haven't necessarily done it. Now Brandon, you're a little different. Because your guys' dealership has, I think, probably gotten closer to more what the real estate industry has done as far as mandating the usage of technology like video chat. So let's walk me through that journey, because I know it wasn't a short journey. So also talk a little bit about how much time it's taken for you guys. Because again, I think for a lot of dealers out there, it's not a flip of a switch. So walk me through that journey.
So this started long before my time. Actually, Chris Beaton was a big catalyst for this process. They started with a video platform here called Outtakes, was I believe the original video platform they used. And after Chris Beaton had gone to, I think it was a Kijiji X or Dealer Talk X, something in Toronto, he had this idea for basically, taking that to the next step. And we created a platform we called Dealbox here. And, this was years in the making. Like, I think, if I remember correctly, this started back in 2014 with the original one. And then in 2016, they started developing our own platform. And now we have our own platform. We're actually about to roll out the new version, like the next version 2.0 of our Dealbox here. And it's an all-encompassing video platform now. And we really do. We mandate it. So every lead that a salesperson receives is supposed to be responded to with a video. They also need to send a minimum of 10 videos a day. So if you don't get 10 leads a day, you need to find a reason to send 10 videos out. So we're doing walk-around videos. We're doing video follow-ups. We're doing sold follow-ups with video. Happy birthday messages from a video from your salesperson just to stay engaged, right? Anything that you can use, we do it over video, and it's much higher conversion. People seem to respond to it a lot better. And one of the things that's really good for us, especially with the platform that we developed, is we get so much more information back. We know when they open it. We know how long they watch it. We know if they share it with friends. So there's a lot of the stuff built into it. And now with this new version of Dealbox that we're rolling out, we're getting actually leads funneled right into the Dealbox platform, so we can actually track the life of a lead all through our own platform that we've built in-house. And the Dealbox platform itself actually won GM's Innovation Award, which was a really high honor. It's awesome. We're the only dealership ever won this Innovation Award. So for us, it's something we're really proud of. And again, we mandate it to our salespeople that this is something you will use. And if you don't want to use it, that's totally fine. You just won't work here.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I'm sorry. I just want to take a moment here real quick. This is the way I'm doing business. This is the way we're going to meet the customer's expectations. And if you don't like it, go find somewhere else to work. Like, that is so perfect. Right. But no, seriously, I mean, there's a lot of dealerships out there that are afraid of doing that. Right? They're afraid of doing that because they have those couple old dogs, in their dealership that makes up, 30, 40, 50% of their monthly sales, but, they're not tracking their efforts. They don't know how many customers they're burning through to actually be able to achieve those numbers, So like, I'm curious, for you, Brandon, did you guys lose any employees over this?
Yes, there was some turnover that happened as a result of some people being stubborn to new processes and not wanting to, embrace the future. But the people who really did embrace it, like our two top sales people now, we have are among two of the highest performers in our whole group. Like, we're a 40 store group, and they're the top 10 every year. Like, these guys are selling north of 220 vehicles a year, and these guys committed to the process. They saw the value in it early. They really adopted it. They worked hard with it, and it's paid off in spades for them. And now when we have the new salespeople in, I can tell, like, I've hired good sales guys and I've hired bad sales guys, but one of the things now is that really early on, one of the steps I'm doing now as part of the hiring process is I'm actually getting people to send me a video before I hire them. Because
that's awesome.
If you're not natural on video, it's not gonna fly here. It's not something you can just teach right away. And if you can't get comfortable on video, at least have the ability to at least make a fool of yourself on video, then you'll never do it here. So
yeah.
That was actually going to be my next question for you was, I mean, obviously this has changed also who you're hiring and how you're attracting them. So, I'm curious, are you finding that you're hiring people that you would have maybe never thought you would have hired in the first place?
There's been a couple people that I've hired that I didn't think I was going to hire. But for the most part now, what it is it's actually showing me a lot of times with the people I thought I was going to hire, I'm really not hiring them anymore. That's been the bigger change. The people who I thought were going to be a slam dunk, I'm sussing that stuff out a little bit easier now.
And I think that's exactly what happens when, you kind of lay out what your expectation of the employee is, and knowing that expectation is in line with the customer's expectation of how they actually engage with them. Hey guys, I know we can go on for this for a while, and I think we probably should do another one of these soon because, real quick, Brandon, actually, the product that you guys have, is that available to any other dealerships?
Sorry, it's only available to Steel currently.
All right, you guys heard it. If you want to utilize this product, you're going to have to go work for a Steel dealership. Hey, but before we go, guys, and we finish off, I get to ask my favorite question of the day. Now, I prepped you both for this before we got here, but it's now time. All right, Bri, you're up. What is pissing Bri Newman off?
Probably the negativity around COVID. Like, I'm a very positive outlook type of person. So hearing the down in the dumps, this is so terrible. Obviously it sucks for sure. I don't want to downplay that we're going through a world pandemic, but like we've had like 6 or whatever weeks we've all kind of been in this lockdown to sit back and be like, how am I going to come out of this stronger? And so the people who are like, I'm just so sick of this, like utilize that time. Like we've had, like, I actually am starting to be like, have I utilized my time well enough during this time? Like, I'm like, we're going to go back to like normal. And I'm going to be like, did I do enough while we weren't in our pandemic world? So I think that's probably like what's bothering me the most is the constant, Groundhog Day of, I can't believe that this is our new normal. People who feel sorry for themselves.
I'm with you. I mean, I think there are a lot of people out there that are kind of stuck in this Groundhog Day type of just like mood and negativity. Mm-hmm. So no, I'm with you on that. I know a handful of those. All right, Mr. Brandon Smith, you're up here. All right. What is pissing Brandon Smith off?
I got 2 for you. So my first one is an easy one. My daughter, who I love very, very much, she is about 3.5 right now, but she has become a sleep terrorist lately. And I just wish I could have one night of just nice long sleep, uninterrupted, no fights before bed or at midnight when I'm just about to go to bed myself. That would be one thing I would really, really love to change. She was such a good sleeper when she was an infant for so long. I don't know what's going on right now, but I want her back. That would be one. And then the second one is all the conspiracy people around the COVID stuff and all the coronavirus stuff. It's just insane. There's so many of them and they're changing every day and they're getting more and more just ludicrous as time goes on. And I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it. Like people saying, oh, Justin Trudeau was under house arrest, or, the thing was developed in a lab and it got out. And there's all these things that just simple research can prove wrong, but these people are spouting it like it's gospel, and I hate it so much.
I'm with you on that. I have a neighbor, and I like my neighbor a lot, but it's like the second I walk out the door, he's got a new conspiracy theory. He knows. He's like, I know exactly what happened. I know how it all happened. Do you want to come? Let me tell you what happened. I'm like, I got to take out the trash in 6 feet away. 6 feet away. I hear you on that one, Brandon. Hey, for everyone out there sorry, what was that, Bri?
Right. I have a neighbor to that point who keeps inviting me to the protests. Oh, no. And it's now on the fact that this was so they could put up 5G networks. Stop every time.
Well, that's a good one. I like that one.
I'm like, no.
Oh, that's a good one. Hey guys, for everybody out there that's listening and watching right now and would love to connect with the two of you and learn a little bit more about what you guys do and follow along with your journey, what is the best way to do so? Bri, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so any one of our HR4 handles, so HR4_dealers on Instagram. We're also active on LinkedIn. My personal LinkedIn I'm quite active on, and then hr4.com. You can always get in touch with us there.
Awesome. And Brandon, for yourself, what is the best way to connect with you?
Easiest thing for me is just reach out on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I respond to everyone. I got a lot of people from message me on LinkedIn, and I'll always message you back. Lots of conversations on there with other sales guys and dealers and whatnot. And I'm the only Brandon Smith that works at Steel Chev, so it should be easy to find. There's a lot of Brandon Smiths, but only one.
I was going to say there's a lot of Brandon Smiths, but you're the only one at Steel.
Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a lot of fun. You guys have yourself a good one. See ya.